Good evening, and thank you all for joining us for our True Talk Thursday podcast, the platform that encourages a thought-provoking conversation about topics centered around education. What's so neat about this podcast is that you'll hear opinions, experiences, research, and ideas from various perspectives. But I want to remind you all that the views and opinions expressed tonight do not necessarily reflect that of Allah's. Now, driving the conversation tonight around America's rescue plan and what it means for America and our education system, we have the executive director of Allah's, Maria Armstrong. And so without further ado, I'll turn to her.
Thanks, Francois. So, yeah, we have a very, I want just going to say it, distinguished couple of gentlemen here that are, I think are going to be really informative tonight. I want to introduce them and start by introducing John. John Moreno Escobar is the executive director of the YV Foundation and Innovative EdTech. And he's based out of South Florida. And he's got an interesting take in the position that he's working on right now. And we're going to get into that in a little bit. And then we also have Vice President for the Alliance of Excellence in Education. And Philip Level is the Vice President of Policy Development and Government Relations. And so these two gentlemen have agreed to have a chat with me about the American Rescue Plan. And that plan came out literally a week ago today, so it couldn't be more timely. And I want to, if I could, just jump in. How's that with you guys? Is that okay?
Let's do it.
Okay. So, I like starting out with just a couple of questions to get the convo going. But first I want to share something. It's like, I've done my homework. See my tabs there? So, and then I think I probably have some, highlighted areas somewhere throughout this 19-page document that came out last week. And it is titled President-elect Biden Announces American Rescue Plan. Now it's President Biden's American Rescue Plan. And so I want to set the table, first, and talk to folks about what this plan really is about. When I first started to delve into it, I saw where it speaks to mounting a national vaccination, kind of rollout or program. And, I started thinking, are we getting ready for another national shutdown? I'm sure just like everyone else, we've been glued to the TV, listening to President Biden talking about uniting a nation, working with governors, having a point person now that came out today, as a matter of fact, having a point person from the CDC at each of the states. So, they're starting to connect the dots and shoring it up. So it'll be interesting if we move to a national shutdown. I know here in DC, small business have been talking about that for a few weeks now, that after, the transition to his presidency, that there could be a look into having a national shutdown for, the next 6 weeks to get a hold on this whole vaccination program. So we don't know. So that's one of the areas. The other is to deliver $1,400 checks to households, that will be able to support some of the shutdown, if you will, and just support, because families that have been hit most hard with that, as well as our support for communities, particularly our small business. And small business is the backbone of our nation, right? And so they've been hit hardest as well. And those are kind of the three points when it comes out the gate, if you will, on this plan. In addition to the global leadership about restoring that, we walked away from the World Health Organization. Now we're going to come back into that fold. And what does that mean in preparing our nation for these biological threats, right? And that's what they are. And they can have a whole host of issues that are related to that with our own food supply, let alone anything else within our nation to have to deal with. And then again, there's the one that we're probably all very attuned and interested in, and that is the reopening of schools. particularly K-8, the majority of K-8 schools within the first 100 days of his presidency. And so, I want to just be able to set that table so that people kind of have a global perspective of what this plan entails, and then let us dive into it a little deeper. So, I kind of real superficial bullet points about this plan. What are the areas of the plan that stood out for you, and why? And I'll let that sit there for a minute, and then you can jump in, whoever wants to jump in first. But what just popped out at you and why?
Sure, I'll go ahead and start. First, thanks very much for having me. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you and talking about these issues. I think a couple things stood out to me. I think globally, right off the bat, the president, and now we can say the President Biden, wanted, I think, to really differentiate himself, his administration, his plan from the previous administration. I mean, this is so much more robust and comprehensive than anything that we saw from the Trump administration. And he got that out, even before he got this out before he even officially took office.
That's right.
I think that it's really very comprehensive, like you were saying, Maria. It hits on everything from expanding testing for COVID, down to increasing the minimum wage.
That's right.
Right. So I mean, it's really taking a broad look at this issue, from looking at it as a health crisis, looking at it as an education crisis. I'm sure we'll get into the details of the education provisions soon, and looking at it as an economic crisis, and then having an appropriate federal response to this, to the magnitude of the crisis that we just haven't seen anything like this, in our history. So, so to me, what really stood out about it was it's quite comprehensive, and therefore it carries an expensive price tag. But that's just, I think, how it needs to be.
Yeah, I think that you cover most of the bases there, Philippe. And again, thank you for inviting me, Maria, and your organization. It's doing an incredible job by informing your teachers, your members, your superintendents, your administrators of what is going on at the local and the national level. And it's a pleasure to be here with Philippe from an incredible organization that also does incredible work around the nation. My impression also was a plan, a well put together plan that we needed, because I think that the former president of the United States let the country go into a MIA with the coronavirus. It was complete denial of this being a global pandemic, and this was impacting most than any other people are people of color, Black and brown communities, heavily impacted by COVID-19. And so for me, the most important part and the most stroking part of this plan was definitely the price tag that just Philippe was mentioning. The $1.9 trillion for me was a huge number. And then when you look into it, it really does bring resources to the most vulnerable areas of our country. The small businesses, which drive the economy for sure, and they employ the majority of Americans. The schools, which actually are heavily impacted, and they drive a lot of they carry a lot of the employees in a specific counties and states and districts. For example, here in South Florida, Broward County Public Schools is the largest employer in the county. And same thing with Miami and New York. Many of them are larger than big corporations. So I think that is important. But lastly, and with this I finish, my impression of reading the document was also the positioning of restaging the United States as the leader in the world when it comes into a global issue. And that's what we needed. And we saw it yesterday with the signing of the executive orders.
Yeah. And to be fair, and I don't know if the word is fair. I'm just thinking that, there's always a plan. It may not be a plan that we, ascribe to or we're privy to even, but there's always a plan, right? And so this one, though, has been put from pen to paper, and it's been distributed. It's been transparent about what we've been talking about on the sidelines, but now, like you said, it's really putting, your money where your mouth is, I guess, is probably the only way I can think of saying that. So speaking of that, is the plan, in your opinion, too ambitious or not ambitious enough? Because sometimes we equate the plans with the dollar figures, and we think of 1.9, I don't know about you, but that's an astronomical amount of money, right? And so, and then there, we can say, well, everything's relative. We're talking about a national, plan that's going to really hit, that is comprehensive. It's going to do a lot of things for a lot of different sectors. And so that's the question I have for you. Do you think it's too ambitious or not ambitious enough?
Well, so, I wouldn't say that it is too ambitious. I do think that there are some, even though this is really comprehensive and even though it's $1.9 trillion, I do think, especially from an education perspective, there are actually some important things that are missing. So, for example, before COVID-19, there were 1.5 million homeless students. And the economic downturn caused by COVID-19, the rise in unemployment, just today there was another, unemployment report, 900,000 people hitting the unemployment. Unemployment leads to increases in homelessness. Duh, right? In every national emergency, whether there are hurricanes or in 2008 the foreclosure crisis, when Congress steps up with its emergency spending plan, there have been specific dollars targeted to support the education for homeless students. In 2009, when the economic stimulus plan passed as the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, Congress actually doubled the funding for the homeless education program. No mention of homeless education in this plan, and no mention and no specific targeting of dollars to support education for homeless kids in anything that's passed Congress thus far. The CARES Act wasn't in there. The bill that passed in December, not in there. And it's just unacceptable.
And are you talking about, like, when it comes to schools, and I'm familiar with McKinney-Vento.
So that's exactly it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the McKinney-Vento program, that where school districts have staff that are specifically there to identify students who are homeless,
Exactly.
connect them to services that they need. For a homeless kid, school is their home. And since schools are largely closed, they've lost home twice. And these school districts the school district liaisons are some of the only people who can really find these young people and connect them to services. And in the hurricanes and the crisis in 2009, Congress stepped up and provided an increase in money for this program. And for what reason, I really do not understand. Congress has not done that yet. So that's item one that's missing. Item number two that's missing from here is an investment to close the homework gap. Mm-hmm. The fact that our research has found that 1 out of 3 Black, Latino, and Native families don't have high-speed home internet. And school districts have been working hard to try to solve this problem. Some of them have been able to cobble together money to pay for internet for this year, or they've used some of the stimulus dollars to try to cover this cost. But there's an existing federal program called E-rate, mm-hmm. that could be used to expand high-speed home internet and make sure the students are doing their work, having the ability to do their work on a computer, not mom's cell phone. There wasn't funding included for this in the CARES Act, in the package that passed last December, and it's not included in this Biden plan, and that makes also very little sense, and is something that hopefully we can resolve as as this process unfolds.
You bring up well, obviously both are super interesting and super important, that they are not, called out or line items like you see some of the other areas that we're going to talk about. But it begs a question, I think, too, that if there's a lot of folks that just want to, quote, go back to normal, right? They just want to go get kids back in school. And then they think, well, we're not going to need technology because we're going to have kids back in school. And I don't know about you, but I talk to a lot of different folks, and that's a blessing because you get to hear their perspective. There's a lot of change in perspective about public education right now. Heck, even private education for some. But in that, folks are talking about, even if there's a vaccine rollout for the masses, my confidence level is just not there right now, is what I'm hearing. And yeah, it's that old adage. That's a great idea. You go first, and then let me just let me hang out on the sidelines. Let me give it a couple 3 years, and let's see what people find. Are the side effects, after effects, whatever you want to call it. And so they are in a position where if they are at home, right, they have the blessing and the luxury to work from home, and they've got kids at home. They have a choice. Most will have a choice to be able to keep their children at home while they continue to commute as well. And especially here in DC, we've been hearing a lot about there isn't going to be an office building open until around maybe August, September. And so as we start to make this turn after the first 100 days, do you think that we're going to see, based on the fact that there isn't a line item for addressing the internet issue? Are we going to see maybe something be built in, or will they leave it out as a, and I don't want to say as a forced issue where, we got to get kids back in school, or are we going to find ourselves on the tail end of that discussion where it's like, why can't we provide, the support of both? Why does it have to be an all or nothing? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I really. Oh, I'm sorry. I've already taken enough airtime. Go ahead, John.
Just one thing, and then I know that there was addressed to your point, but I just want to reiterate what Maria is mentioning, which is I'm really impressed that there is no a specific provision on this or an item that talks about incentivizing school districts to accelerate their vision of public education in the future. Because what we have seen is that education is going into digital. Education is going into maybe personalization of having you have 5 students and 1 teacher instead of having 20 or 15 per teacher. It's going to reimagine education. So I'm really impressed that there is no vision for giving school districts and even states to flex their way of seeing education in the future. So that is one. And the second one, more aligned to what you're saying, Maria, it's that, there are families that are not going to be able to stay with their kids at home. And we all have to understand that. But I think the point here is to make sure that there is a transition back to schools in which everyone feels safe. And it's not by dumping money into the school system, and it's not by just saying, money is going to fix it, but there is schools in really in specific areas in the United States that there is no roof. There is no conditions to bring back students or teachers with pre-existing conditions or no air filters, right? They're not buying the right filters for the ACs here in South Florida. So we're having a lot of issues with that, for example. So we really have to think about how we are advocating for this bill to move with at least some ideas around reinventing education and really having a conversation. I think that we missed this big time on like, let's talk to higher education institutions, which drive the mechanics of education at the end of the day. What we could do to bring into the conversation higher ed, government, K to 12, non-for-profits, and the new unicorns out there, Coursera, right? Let's bring them to the conversation. They've been waiting for this to happen in a different way, a transition that was more organic, and people were just delaying it. And now we hear with this Finnish, principals that never wanted to have a digital world in their classrooms just have to go through that. And they were in denial for many years. Oh, we're not ready. We don't have the budget. Now, out of the sudden, they have the budget. Yeah. They're willing to learn, and they're ready to pay the dollars, right, to go and put students into online learning. And it's not about transferring the classroom into a Zoom call. It's really making education a way in which the students are developing their skills and they thrive at the end of the day. And I don't think that is being something that we've been paying a lot of attention. And this plan is really comprehensive. It's really ambitious. It should be, maybe the price tag, it's enormous, but it should be more, I feel. But we all have our conservative friends that will not pass and we're going to talk about this, but there's some other friends on the other side of the alley that are not going to pass a bill that it's larger than this because of the deficit we already have. But Philip, you had another comment, I do apologize.
No, sure. No, I agree with so much of what you're saying, on, Shamaria's question about, will the lack of technology be used as an excuse to essentially force kids to go back into school? I certainly hope not. I think for a couple of reasons. One is that the federal government's largest education technology program, the E-rate program, is administered by the FCC, Federal Communications Commission. And just today, actually, the president appointed Commissioner Jessica Rosenworcel to serve as the acting chair of the commission. And she has been a huge proponent for closing what she calls the homework gap. This idea that kids need high-speed internet and devices to do their homework. Of course, she called it the homework gap before COVID-19. Now it's not the homework gap. It's just the access gap. Like, you gotta have internet access and a device in order to go to school for so many kids. So I think that there will be a different level of advocacy for the Congress to do something about this. And I sure hope that at the end of the day that the bill actually includes something to close the homework gap. The bill that passed in December, it took some steps to expand broadband, and I don't want to overlook those things, but when you've got 50 million students going to school, most of them either being remote or hybrid, you've got to target that problem. You can't just you can't just say we're gonna take some measures to expand broadband. No, you've got to be working with school districts to make sure the kids can go to school, and we haven't seen that that happen yet. And so that's I'm hoping that with the leadership of the Federal Communications Commission that we will we'll see some progress there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think and that's what prompted the questions, like, is it too ambitious or is it not ambitious enough? And I think you both articulated that, there are parts of it where we need to take some bold action, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about that because we've got to take a quick break, but we got to start talking about some bold action. So we'll hold that thought, and we'll take a quick break.
Hey there, and don't forget, if you like what you hear and want to gain some more insight into what school districts are facing now, then tune in every Thursday at 7 p.m. or subscribe below. We thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great night.